Hi everyone, it's Mary Lurson, the Executive Director of the NAMM Foundation, and welcome to our today's webinar, Virtual Fundraising. It can be more than you think, and something that I know we're all involved in now and may be concerned about as we approach the end of a traditional fundraising and donor year, being at November with 1 month to go. So we're so grateful that you're with us. Always wonderful to see people logging on and joining us for our webinars. As we always start with our webinars, I have to remind you of NAMM's antitrust policy. Those of you that have been with us before probably have it memorized with us, but we do take it very seriously that we are not involved with competitive pricing or market conversations, and the details of that antitrust policy is always available for you at namm.org if you're interested. We are involved with an interactive webinar. We'll have some breakouts today after some of the presentations by our experts and our folks that are working hard in the space of fundraising. And but the chat feature is active, and I believe there may be a slide here that'll be showing you what's available. I'm not seeing the slide, but hopefully you are. That is available for you to see, that you could enter your questions, and it's something that we'd be happy to make available to you as we move through. It is important that we are interactive. This event is being recorded, and we'll be adding it to our accumulated materials available at NAMM Foundation of our fall webinar series. We've been very involved in various topics this fall, including music and social justice, our Nonprofit Management Institute, of which this event is a part of. Our Gen Next program, we actually have an event this Friday for our college music students and faculty, music educators, a lot of information available to you about online learning, community music making, and also music and wellness, something that we have to remember that in all of this, music really has a vital role to play in our health and well-being. So very eager to have you join us and go back and experience any of those webinars. Maybe with your programming too, we're finding that we're getting 2, 3, 4 times, 5 times as many post-event views as we do for our live events. So the same is happening here. We're recording this and encourage you to share it with your colleagues if it's helpful. And we do believe it, we've certainly learned a lot even by putting the webinar together. So I'm happy to introduce you to what we affectionately refer to as the Dean of our Nonprofit Management Institute, David Dick, the National Executive Director of Young Audiences. David has been such a remarkable partner in actually developing our Nonprofit Management Institute. We do this because we want to see nonprofit music service organization achieve their full potential, be strong and thriving organizations in their communities where so much music learning and music making takes place, along with other art making and art experiences for all people. And we know the value of this to every person's life and their well-being and the life of our communities. So I turn it over to our esteemed Dean of the Nonprofit Management Institute. David, we'll have to work on a title promotion as we move through the years, but right now we're delighted that you're our Dean and helping curating and organizing these wonderful events. And special thanks to our speakers at events. So David, I turn it over to you.
Mary, thank you so much. If I'm the dean, then you're indeed the chancellor. So with that, I'm thrilled to be here today. What an incredible topic to have right now, right? And about virtual learning, and whether it works or not, and we're going to talk a lot today. It works. We're going to have to make it work, right? And with that, I think just some real opportunity that people do want to give. They want to support. They do right now want to make a difference. Maybe even more so in a time where it feels very difficult to find where those differences are. But with that, I'm just really, I think, looking forward today. My big news here is to get out of the way. So we have 2 speakers with us this afternoon, and we're going to go to the next slide. Richard Hania, who is the Director of Major Gifts and Partnerships at Little Kids Rock, and Susan Shapiro, founder Shapiro Associates. groups. Two great speakers that I'll tell you to begin with. When we were doing a little run through yesterday about just the content and the sequence and the PowerPoint slides, I'm in the midst of, I just prepared and sent out this morning an appeal to our national board, an appeal that we announced 2 weeks ago at a board meeting. But just listening to these two great speakers yesterday, I quick went back to my letter and started making some changes. So I think with that, incredibly important that you just pick up one or two great ideas today, you fold that into the work. So as an overview, and I'm a former educator, so I think you need to go from what we're going to do. Susan's going to talk a little bit about that whole world of individual, foundation, corporate, board engagement, some great just statistics, figures, what's working, what's not, how to move things forward, what to remember. And then Keith is going to move over to the whole piece here about effective practices and really talking about online solicitation and galas and virtual galas and all that. That's going to bring us to about probably halfway through the session, probably around 30 minutes past the hour. And then we're going to break up into small groups, 3 groups, which both Keith, Susan and I will be in those groups and give you a real opportunity to talk about your work, to ask about questions. Then we'll come back as a group, do a little bit of reporting out, and we'll be done for the day. So I think it's an incredibly I think important topic, and I'm just so thankful to both Susan and Keith for their contributions today. So Susan, good afternoon. We're going to start with you. So I'm so glad you're here, Susan. Thank you so much.
Hi there. Thank you, David. And I'm Susan Shapiro, as David mentioned. I am the president and founder of Shapiro Associates. We have a national consulting firm in fundraising management and strategy. And I'm thrilled to be able to be a part of this nonprofit management institute. Can we go to the next slide, please? I think what we're going to talk about, as David mentioned, I want to go through what's happening around the country, what we're seeing, the impact of the pandemic on fundraising, and then follow that up with some tactics and tips and strategies on how to put this into practice going into next year. So I just looked before we came on, and certainly the market was down a little bit today, but we've had a pretty strong market. If you look at the recession some 12 years ago, you'll see that even though the market was down close to 40% over this period of 2007 to 10, giving to nonprofits remained fairly steady and slight declines. But now today, with the market being strong, I think this is buoying a lot of philanthropy around the country. Next slide, please. So what does fundraising look like today? Since the start of the pandemic, over $12 billion has been raised for such things as basic needs, food insecurity, communities of color, and this has surpassed all disaster giving, predominantly, as we know, which is usually in the form of hurricanes. What's interesting is that overall giving in this period of time this year is higher. It's 21% higher than compared to last year. And what we're seeing is it kind of rings true what David was saying, is that people seem much more motivated to give than at any other time that we've seen in our history. Total giving for the year is likely to be down, we think, maybe as high as 10%, but we'll see. The pandemic has generated a number of new donors and has recaptured, a lot of organizations have recaptured their current donors. Major gifts and foundations are in fact leading the charge. We'll talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. And interestingly, and maybe because some of these new donors are younger donors, we'll talk about, donors under $250 are showing some really large gains. Next slide, please. But the gains really aren't felt by all. And I know most people on this call are probably in that bucket. Organizations whose business models rely really heavily on ticket sales and on on in-person events are feeling the crunch and feeling the pinch. And Keith will talk about this in great depth. I only wanted to touch upon it. There's an organization that we work with, a theater company here in the city. And what's interesting is they didn't pivot to an online gala, but they've been able to recapture a lot of the gala revenue by reaching out to their major donors. So that was a particularly interesting outcome of the connection between their major donors and the organization. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. There we go. So thank you. So let's talk a moment about recent trends. What's happening in individual giving, of course, the largest segment of philanthropic support in the country. So major donors are stepping up. What we're seeing is people are interested in working with your organization and asking, what can I do? We think that giving will return to baseline numbers, but that said, I want to talk to people or just mention that if people feel like donors are going to be tapped out and therefore afterwards are not going to go back to the level of giving that they had been supporting your organization before, we're feeling that is not the case. Online small donor campaigns are way up. 26% of those gifts were made on a mobile device, and that is inching up. We've seen this over the last few years, but in fact, we're seeing more of that during the pandemic. Small to mid-sized organizations that requalify as operating budgets between $1 and $10 million really have seen the greatest growth. Direct mail giving is stable. The response rate and the average gift sizes are up. And of course, one might know that donor acquisition, which is always obviously a very costly and difficult in direct mail to get. Many donors are shifting their giving to COVID relief. So donor acquisition is sort of flat. But that said, in May, as many of you may have participated on May 5th, was another Giving Tuesday, and that drove over $500 million in online gifts. What's interesting is that the new COVID-19 donor, so these donors are younger, they are as wealthy or as affluent as their traditional donors that we all work with, but they are more responsive to digital communications, and that's probably because of their age group. Next slide, please. Let's talk about institutional funding. Next slide, please. I guess we're a little sticky. There we are. So let's talk a moment about foundation and corporate support. So foundations have been a steady source of support throughout the pandemic, and very much higher in the first 6 months of the year. That said, well, let me talk just corporate giving. Let me just say that in corporate giving, we find that corporate giving has been very high this year. And it's led by Google, and that's mostly cash and in-kind gifts. But we are a bit concerned that corporate giving may not remain as high. In philanthropies and foundations, foundations are making fewer grants, larger grants. They're trying to get their money out the door faster. And most importantly, they've been easing restrictions and the conditions and limitations on the grants. So prioritizing operating support over designated program support. They're streamlining applications, and the reporting processes are much simpler than they had been in the past. And many foundations, and some that we work with, are trying to accelerate their payment schedules. Donor advised funds, many of you may know of donor advised funds, DAFs, fastest growing tool in the country for donors to create funds with either community foundations or commercial funds like Schwab and Fidelity, where the donor can take an immediate tax benefit and then choose when to put the grants out. What's interesting is with donor advised funds, just very quickly, they are not required, as foundations do, to give out 5%. So the fact that donor advised funds are up is very encouraging. And lastly, there's nearly $8 billion that have been given out in grants to support racial equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next slide, please. So what should we be doing? What are some of the tactics and tips that we could be thinking about and working on to end the year and going into next year? Believe in your donors. So important. Call your major donors, ask how they're doing, focus on your current donors, and in many organizations, particularly those where they've had to furlough staff, they're starting to outsource other development tasks so that major gift officers and development officers can function with focusing on working with major donors. Keep engagement high, keep in contact with your funders, foundations, and corporate funders as well. Let them know how you're doing. When I say be authentic, explain your needs. Funders want to know, they don't just want to know that you're surviving, they want to know what the challenges are. They want to know where they can help. Be authentic. Ask for their support. It's time to drop the donor fatigue myth. We don't think there is donor fatigue. That's why Jesse James kept going to the banks. Consider monthly messaging and giving to help with your cash flow. Consider participating in Giving Tuesday, which is coming up on December 1st. And of course, you can't thank donors enough. There's not as many ways to thank donors. As you know, a satisfied donor tells 3 people about your organization, and an unsatisfied donor tells 15. Next slide, please. What should we be doing with your case for giving? Have a plan, be prepared to talk about it, articulate your impact, and demonstrate your leadership. Those organizations that are able to talk about the impact that they're making are raising more money. Don't stop fundraising. Keep fundraising. Those organizations that paused and stopped have a lot to make up for it. Maintain your social media campaigns. Conduct virtual briefings. Many of our clients are telling their story through virtual briefings and demonstrating their leadership and able to showcase your subject matter expertise. Be hopeful and be optimistic in your communications with your donors. Next slide, please. This is like speed dating. So the last point I want to say is believe in your board and use them strategically. So some organizations are featuring exclusive chats for high-level donors and prospects and bringing board members in, as well as your senior leadership, talking about the state of the state. Your donors want to know what you're hearing. They don't necessarily hear it. They want to hear it from you. Ask board members to join on a call with a potential donor. Seek their perspectives in addressing your approach to diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial equity. There are many organizations that are addressing this writ large with their boards, with their advisory councils. Talk with your funders about your plans. Have board members call you new donors, as well as donors over a certain amount. Many board members are a little skittish about soliciting, we understand, but they're not skittish about thanking people. And if you don't already have a strategy on how you might access funds from donor advised funds, then start talking to your board and your community foundation about how you might access donor advised funds. Let donors know you can receive gifts. You can put this on your website. You can add it to your appeals. And lastly, I want to just share with you, I'm not going to go through this. Next slide, please. Is I'm sharing with you 3 case studies that I thought you might be interested in. One is from the Fisher Center at Bard, where they were streaming digital content and pivoted rather quickly. And I'm going to move aside so Keith can get into that. The New Jersey Symphony Orchestra has created these couch concerts, which is really interesting. And Williamstown Theater Festival actually collaborated with another organization to be able to have donors listen to their season's works via podcast. So I'm glad, I'm so delighted that I'm here. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate. Call me, email me. Happy to answer any of your questions. We are, of course, doing the best we can virtually, but I appreciate the invitation and I wish you all good luck and keep fundraising. David.
Susan, thank you so much. You know, it's interesting, a couple things you brought up. One, you know, that there's nothing like for the small organization, the $10,000 gift, but boy, to get 40 $250 gifts and then to have 40 names to work with, you know, and you want to do both, right? And I love the point about don't forget your board, but also I'm reminded, also don't solely rely on your board either. Right. And there's nothing like an outside gift sometimes to inspire and engage a board. But hopefully, I a while back used the word Rolodex, and no one knew what I meant by what is a Rolodex. But that's the piece your board should provide. They may not want to actually actively raise the money, but boy, they should have names. They should tell your story, right? And I think, you know, that
you can thank people.
That's it. And the thanking is so important in the welcoming. So thank you so much. Keith, good afternoon. Interesting. We're kind of pivoting to this idea of individual engagement, right? So take it away, please, Keith.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me today. You know, so my name's Keith Hana from Little Kids Rock. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we pivoted from our annual gala in New York City, you know, a major event that we held each year, to our first ever virtual benefit after this pandemic hit. So, you know, our events each year would bring people from all over the country into New York City for a star-studded benefit event at a major venue. We usually have about 500 to 700 guests, and you know, we raise anywhere from 800,000 to 1.3 million. But the event cost a lot. It was a lot of time, a lot of staff, a lot of volunteers, and a lot of expenses, sometimes almost as high as $400,000 worth. Next slide, please. So we would always bring out some A-list talent that would help attract people out. And, you know, that while we didn't pay artists, we did pay for their expenses, which included Usher's awesome yellow leather jacket there. And the artists performing on stage with our kids was always a highlight. That's what would really stand out as the most impressive part of the show. And raising money during the events through a live and silent auction and a fund to need was always a very important part of our strategy, usually bringing in an extra, you know, close to $100,000 the night of the event. Next slide. And finally, the thing about our in-person event that was very, very special was it was interactive. We would each year do a music making experience with the audience. So it was, in this case, you could see every table had boom whackers of different chords. So we played a song together. In other years, we put drumsticks or ukuleles on the table so people could get a visceral experience of what our mission really was. And we would hire tons of different vendors, right? From catering to the venue to a PR firm, production and talent wrangling, a musical director, an auctioneer, and lots of volunteers. Next slide, please. So the pandemic hit in mid-March, as we all remember vividly, and within a month, we canceled our October event that we were planning. And we pivoted very, very quickly and decided to host a virtual benefit in July, because we figured that we'd be at the end of this pandemic by that time. And we wanted to make sure to do this while people were still at home, still craving entertainment and live music. So, you know, we still charged a high price for these tickets, you know, anywhere from $100 to $500 per ticket. But those prices were still, we cut them by about 50% or more. Because again, this is an online event. So it's hard to justify, you know, $1,000 ticket prices when it doesn't come with a 3-course meal or an open bar. But we still managed to raise over $615,000, which isn't quite as much as we did in person, but because our expenses were barely 40,000, we netted nearly the same amount, and our ratio was much better, as I'll get into in a little bit. We also were able to expand our artist lineup considerably. As you can see from our the slide here, we had several noteworthy artists and celebrities participate. And in lieu of doing live music making with our audience, everybody together, instead we had 5 live virtual VIP activations that helped sort of bolster the main show. And these were available exclusively for people who had VIP tickets. So these included things like live trivia, a cooking demo with a celebrity chef, cocktail mixing, and things like that. And the main show consisted of mostly pre-recorded testimonials and musical performances. So we didn't have to deal with producing a live, almost television show, because we're not experts in that. And while we did have a silent auction and a fund to need, we weren't able to do a live auction. And while there was no official after party, because there was no gathering, we did have a post-event DJ dance party where DJs were spinning music for about an hour. And our vendors changed completely. Instead of having a venue to pay, instead we paid a technology platform that we embedded into our website. We had instead of a major production team, because there was no major production, we invested in a really great video and sound editor. And I will, at the end of this, add a link to the chat so that you can all check out the virtual benefit at your own leisure. Next slide, please. So there were a lot of things that actually remained the same. We were putting on an event that was going to touch the hearts of people, right? People come to your events to feel good about supporting a cause. So they should hear from the people that you serve. And in our event, our kids were still the stars, our teachers were still the heroes, and our mission was front and center throughout. Now, as Susan alluded to before, your major donors, your loyal corporate sponsors, your board members, they are the lifeblood of this event. And they contribute because they believe in your organization and your mission. So it is as important as ever that we communicate with them and let them know how we're still achieving our mission so that they don't feel like they're contributing toward what may be a sinking ship. And also to communicate just what our virtual event experience would be like so that they could socialize it to their networks and help sell more tickets and help explain just what Little Kids Rock's gala would be like if you're not actually going to a venue to see live music. But like at all events, you need a plan for both that mission-related giving and transactional giving, because not everyone is going to be inspired to contribute through emotionally stirring appeals. So people will show up because they're excited by the celebrity talent that's involved. And these are the same people that likely will spend money on auction items and memorabilia and experiences. But as I'll mention in the next slide, or a couple of slides, there are new opportunities with this, like securing virtual experiences with artists. And you can and still should create tiered experiences for VIPs and for your sponsors. This will give you something to upsell, and it'll also give you an opportunity to create exclusive experiences that your largest and most loyal supporters will remember forever. And after the event, your guests and your board will have feedback. As always, listen to them. They're the ones who make or break your event and make it a financial success. They may not be experts at planning it, but they are experts at attending it. Next slide. It became very evident very quickly that there were a slew of new challenges that came along with deciding to do a virtual event. And the first one was choosing the right technology. So we wanted to make our event both interactive and special, but also easily accessible. And that was a difficult balance to strike. Plus, there's new technology coming out every day. So what may have made sense in July may not make sense in December. In fact, I think there are some people on this call right now that may be experts in producing live streamed events. It really depends on who your audience is and what your goals are. You don't necessarily have to choose the most complex technology to succeed. Also for us, Student artist collaborations, as I mentioned, are super important. And, you know, we were not able to have everybody in the same room on the same stage rehearsing together. So it became very important to become experts in communicating to both students and to artists how to record from home on their smartphones without a teacher to support or an artist's entire team to support. And so in this case, with this slide, Graham Nash sent us a very grainy video of himself playing and singing Teach Your Children, which is a perfect song for this event. And he was playing a slightly out of tune guitar, but with the right harmonies and editing work, it ended up sounding beautiful. So again, very important to have a great video editor and sound engineer. And as far as generating revenue is concerned, because this is why we throw virtual galas or in-person galas, finding the right price for tickets and sponsorships to reach your fundraising goals, but also to not price people out of buying tickets is incredibly important. And unfortunately, there is no one-size-fits-all answer. So this is why communicating with your board members and your major donors all year long is so important, because you're likely not the only people putting on events that they're going to. So you can gauge what they're willing to spend, what other organizations have done. And you know, if you're the type of organization that is going after fundraising from the general public, more micro donations, then you need to keep your ticket prices super low or completely free and really focus on raising money during the event, because there's so much content online that even a $1 ticket might be a gating factor that will turn people away. And, you know, as I mentioned, we didn't have a live auction or a live fund-a-need, which usually generate lots of money. So it's very important, even I think more important for a virtual event, to have a great host who can read scripts naturally, who can keep the show flowing, and who can urge people to donate at the right moments. And TV personalities are perfect for this. Next slide, please. So once we let go of the fact that planning a successful virtual benefit was not as simple as just recreating the in-person experience, but online, we began to see new opportunities to achieve and also to measure our success. The most notable was the lower expenses. As I mentioned, we spent about 10% of what our normal events costs, and we raised more than half of what we normally raise, which is a much better ratio and about the same net. And for those in the nonprofit world, a good fundraising ratio is very, very important, especially for your events. Also, you know, a new opportunity is being able to repurpose footage or things that you've done with artists in the past. In this case, with Elvis Costello, he did this great performance in 2017 with some of our students. And since we weren't able to pull something as perfect as that off virtually, we just asked Elvis to record a simple testimonial, put it right at the beginning, and then showed the video. It was professionally shot, and most people hadn't seen it before. And if they had, I'm sure they didn't mind a bit of nostalgia. Another really great opportunity is being able to reach people who otherwise may not have come to your in-person event for a variety of reasons. Either, you know, they live too far away, they have lots of conflicts during that time of year, or as Susan mentioned, they might give from donor advised funds, which cannot be tied to any goods or services. So this is a situation where it's a straight donation. They're not getting any food, any beverages, or anything else in return. Although that is an option, shipping packages to people's homes. And finally, one last new opportunity. Though it is more difficult to justify charging hundreds of dollars for a ticket to an online event, there are broader visibility options for corporate sponsors. So as you can see here, our title sponsor, the Hot Topic Foundation, had their logo on screen throughout the entire show. And then other companies could sponsor individual segments. We had slides throughout that were nods to our sponsors. So you can use every opportunity that you can to feature your sponsors. Next slide, please. So a few lessons learned before we wrap up here. Goals dictate your technology and ticket strategy. And this is something I wish I had really grasped this when we first started planning the event. It would have just saved some time. But really ask yourself, who is your target audience for generating revenue, for raising funds? Is it corporate sponsors who are seeking brand exposure? the general public looking for an exclusive experience? Or is it your major donors, your trusted supporters who are excited to see how you'll pivot and innovate? And ask yourself, what percentage of your audience are mission-oriented donors versus transactional donors? And then plan your show accordingly. Also, be very deliberate about exploiting those checkbook moments during the show to raise money. So the slide that you're seeing here was one of the favorite things that I and Little Kid Rock have ever produced. The girl on the left is Julia. She's 14 years old, and she wrote this incredible song called Fighting. And we got Vance Joy on the right, one of her musical heroes, to record her song. And then we edited the two together, and we captured Julia's authentic reaction when she saw it for the first time. And I mean, this was the moment of the show that the heartstrings were tugged. I wish we had been more deliberate about asking people to donate at that time, instead of going into the next slide and putting something on the lower third. You know, two last points here. You know, another thing that we just weren't able to pull off due to just our lack of technology and lack of staff to help facilitate was sort of recreating the experience of sitting at a table together. We were hoping that we could create sort of Zoom watch parties, which in the future we may do. And I think the way to do it is to host a few Zoom watch parties with, you know, your staff there to schmooze and talk with the VIP supporters who join. And you can watch the show together, and you can also arrange for intimate personal drop-ins by your artist supporters or board members. And so it's another opportunity to give a very unique and exclusive experience for your best supporters who in the past may have expected a photo op with an artist in front of a step and repeat. And then, you know, the last, you know, lesson that I learned here was that, you know, if you do charge a lot of money like we did to see this event, plan to have a free option. Make sure that people that aren't going to pay also have the opportunity to view, so you get maximum exposure. So in our case, we asked the Hot Topic Foundation, our title sponsor, if we could rebroadcast our event 1 week after the initial live stream. And we put it on their YouTube channel, which has enough subscribers to allow them to add a donate button. And this also gave us access to a major company's mailing list. And it gave that company, who again is a supporter of ours, great content to share with their followers. So it was a win-win. It gave us something to promote after the event happened, which helped with PR. And then we were able to host our videos as individual segments for easy viewing on our YouTube channel. Last slide, please. So my last point here is just to remember that for the most part, people are more compassionate now that we're living together through such difficult times. So don't worry if you aren't able to create the most innovative virtual event, or if the technology fails, or if some people have trouble accessing your event and end up getting upset, which happened with us. You get to be the human connection between your donors and your mission, even if you can't be there with them in person. So use this chance to be kind and patient and deliver unprecedented levels of customer service. And remember to remind your supporters and yourself that even though this is not the ideal way to share your organization's mission with others, you're doing it because your mission's still very important. You still need to raise funds to achieve it. And we're all doing the best that we can. And I think that will shine through if you let it. Thank you so much, and looking forward to chatting with you in the breakouts.
Keith, thank you so much. So important we listen to our gala attendees, right? I have a number of attendees, and that's what they're like professional gala goers, right? They go to all of them, and boy, they can tell you exactly what works and what doesn't work and all that. So this is terrific. Eric, let's pull up the slide. We're going to move into breakout groups, and these groups are going to be exactly 15 minutes, which means at the end, the report out is going to be Keith or Susan or I are actually going to kind of lift up something that was said in there. But when we get to the room, if someone could please quickly see if you can beat out your fellow attendees to want to be the note taker. All right, a very prestigious job. So let's not spend a couple minutes on that. And a couple just questions to kind of get started in there, which are what are some effective ways of connecting with your donors? Or, hey, I need some effective ways. Or what are you doing in terms of making a case? Or I need help making a case, or the board, but just some discussion points here, just wherever you take it is absolutely fine. But I think this moment for you all just to talk is really important. So Claire, let's whisk away to the breakout rooms, and we'll see everybody back in 15 minutes. The great thing when you do a great breakout is you start learning things yourself, and I had some wonderful learning. So the note takers, we're going to find a way that we'd like to get your notes back to us, and then we're going to all collate that into one document and share it with everybody, just so we see that it's there. But to expedite a little bit of a report out, what I've asked for Keith and Susan and I are going to do is just not a summary of the conversation as much as, Keith, let's start with you. Could you just lift up something that was said? You know, what's an interesting takeaway? Just the thoughts there.
Yeah, so you know, a lot of people reference things that they had seen, whether it was through the people that they serve, or on social media, or in other events that were what I like to call bright spots. So what we talked about was finding those bright spots, and then our role as you know, at least those in the nonprofit world, is to amplify them and help teach others. So we talked about, you know, students wanting to learn how to record together from a distance, but not everybody knows how to do that. So it's our job then to become experts in how to do that, learn from the people that are doing it well, and then put them in the position to share it with more people, so that, in our case, so that public school teachers around the country are able to produce videos with their students, and you know, and then be able to still make music together, even though we're very physically distant.
Terrific, thank you. Susan, if you can unmute, and what did you lift up from your conversation?
Sure. Well, we started off, we talked a little bit about how to access donor advised funds and what are the different ways you can access it. How do you promote that your organization will receive donor advised funds? We also spent some time just talking about some of the tips and tactics, like creating urgency in your appeals, making it time sensitive, and also the whole benefit of matching funds or challenge funds and how effective they've been in small campaigns that people have run. And then we also spent a little bit of time talking about online platforms. What are some of the different online platforms for online giving? So we were sharing amongst all of us. Somebody's in Canada, Rob is in Canada, Miriam's in New York. So we had a nice rich discussion about a few points, and I think everyone is looking forward to getting the deck and the notes distributed.
Terrific. And my group, we were talking a lot about just event driven, and it was interesting about this idea of, are you doing an event to support your institution, or is it to support a program, or is it to support a special initiative, or to support a worthy cause that might not be what you actually do, but somebody you partner with? And I think just finding that right opportunity to bring people together. I think also for institutions, there's an incredible moment to really talk also about and show really evidence of generosity of spirit, right? So it's not just your work, or Keith used the phrase sinking ship, right? That we've got to see beyond, I think you know, where we are at the moment, right? You know, just to close, you know, I think the interesting urgency, and Maureen, we can see you now. Hey, the urgency right now is, you know, the CARES Act did provide some provisions that are going to time out at the end of December. One being lifting any caps for individual givers, people who also do not itemize their you know, deductions, up to you know, as low as $300 cash contribution to somebody will be added on top of that, right? Corporate donations, you know, caps have been lifted from, I think, 10% of proceeds to 25%. So there's some interesting pathways there, but there's going to be a rush pretty soon for individuals as they quit thinking about, okay, what does my giving look like? Because I'm thinking about my taxes for next year. There's an incentive there. I've not found a lot of data that people really give because they've worked it out to the penny what the government will allow, and it's really about where the passion point is. But I will say, especially for all of this, as Susan said, foundations have been doing an incredible job just becoming really flexible. Right? Individuals, they want to see where can they make an impact. And I think with this is just a great opportunity of sharing your story. You're a worthy cause, but also right now, every one of you on the call could become an international organization if you want, right? In terms of that reach. And it's about just how special is that appeal, how special is that opportunity. And, you know, we elect presidents on $5 and $10 donations, right? Because it's about how many can you get, and we've got the right cause for that. So with that, let me just hand it over to Claire. She's going to wrap us up with some commercial announcements, and with that, just it was great seeing you all today. Happy Thanksgiving, and handing over to you, Claire.
Thank you all for being here. It's so fun to see so many friends here, Menzi and Dorsey and trying to see who else here. Miriam. We miss you guys, and so it's fun to see you. Yeah, Eric, you can go ahead and put up the slide. So just a couple of announcements. This Friday, November 20th at 9 a.m., we're doing a collaboration with the College Music Society. We're doing a career development and entrepreneurship workshop. We're featuring the Gateway Brass Collective, which will be pretty awesome if you know that group. And we will be talking about opportunities for college students in the current environment. Now, I know if you know a college student or you're a teacher or know a teacher, please forward that, and you can find that at nammfoundation.org. Also, we ask you to save the date. We're doing a very exciting NAMM Foundation holiday celebration on December 7th. Violin virtuosos Black Violin they're going to be co-hosting, and we have some phenomenal performances lined up for you and some fun little interstitials and stories, and Eric has promised to do a stand-up comedy routine, which you will not want to miss.
That's not true.
Eric has been working on his material. Let's just say he's got some work to do, but you will want to tune in for that.
17th. Sorry, Claire. It's the 17th, not the 7th.
17th, that's what I meant to say. Yeah. And then the Believe in Music Fall Webinar Series, I feel like I've seen a few of you on a few of these, but if you would like to check out we have a series that we've done in the Nonprofit Management Institute that Jessica and David have beautifully put together. Highly recommend you go back and rewatch, covering multiple topics. We also have Susan, to your point, it's very validating to hear we're on track because we started a music and social justice program where we are looking at diversity and inclusion in the music products industry head on. And there's programming there for that. So please go back and view and share those sessions. And then finally, Believe in Music Week. As most or all of you know by now, the NAMM show is not possible because of the COVID realities. So we are moving that onto an online format. And we are working tirelessly on amazing programs. There will be nonprofit sessions. We're debuting a few different exciting programs that week, and registration is open. If you go to believeinmusic.tv, it's free to everyone. It's open to everyone. There are no restrictions on who can register. The foundation we're starting our programming on Monday, January 18th, and then the marketplace, which is the products, the fun part, opens on Thursday, January 21st. So thank you everyone so much. Mary had to run, so I'm pinch hitting here. Hopefully this was useful and informative. Great job, Jessica, David, always a pleasure. Keith and Susan, your new biggest fans. So proud and of all of the work all of you are doing, and it's really great to see you. David, if you have anything left to say, please say it. Otherwise, we will wrap up. And thank you all very much.
No, just thank you to Eric and Jessica and Sharon and Bethany and you, Claire, and just for all your work on the back end. And yeah, it's nice kind of taking an hour and feeling like you've kind of created a community, right? And let's sort of carry that, especially into the spirit of Thanksgiving coming up next week. But thank you all, and you've all got new friends here. So any questions you need, I know Susan and Keith will be fighting to answer them for you. But just keep in touch, and don't feel like you need to do this alone, because you don't need to. So thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
We appreciate
Happy
your time.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Turkey Day.